All right, next up, I've got Rabbit Trap. Rabbit Trap is directed by Bryn Cheney, and it really has basically a three-hander. In fact, this may truly be a three-hander. I'm trying to think if there's any other human beings that you see in this movie, and I don't think there are. I think it's truly three people. You got Darcy, played by Dev Patel. You've got Daphne, played by Rose McEwen, which I can't remember what the name of the movie was we saw her in. Something Blue, something. We saw Rose McEwen in a movie, and she was really good. She's good here, too. And then you have the child, played by Jade Crute. So, boy, this is a tough one. This is, and I'm curious to see what Eric thinks of this movie. This is the kind of movie that you either get with the vibe of it and you dig it, or it just is insufferably independent and meandering and slow and doesn't go anywhere kind of movie. It depends on how you feel early on in this movie, whether you're in for the vibe, because this is a vibe kind of movie. Absolutely. I could see Eric either kind of digging this movie or hating this movie. I'll be very curious, because I think he did watch this movie. Definitely it's kind of the movie that Eric doesn't like a lot of times. And if you're listening to only me and you're like, what's this Eric guy that Bruce keeps talking about? It's not my alter ego. It's not my second personality. Eric is one of the three members of CinemAddicts podcast that we have. Look it up. If you look in our feed here, you should see a bunch of stuff with Eric and Greg. All right. This takes place in 1976 in Cymru, which is Wales. I had to kind of look that up. But they do mention Wales or Welsh at one point. And one thing this does that I really like is it has a weird subgenre of horror, I guess. Horror is like horror, fantasy, sci-fi. Probably horror fantasy, I think, would be the approach of this. Mysterious. But it has a subgenre that I really enjoy, which is movies about people that do sound recording. You know, Barbarian Sound System, I think is what it was called. Blowout is another one. The Conversation. There's these kind of movies where there's this kind of analog, old school audio recording and mysteries around audio and stuff. So the first third of this movie, the way they developed the mystery and the way they use sound in here, I was really loving it, engaged in it. And I always watch my movies, unless I'm in a theater, I always watch my movies with headphones on. That's just a constant for me. Partly it just helps me hear what's going on, but I just feel like I'm always more immersed in movies with headphones on. And in fact, I almost have a hard time watching them without headphones on. And I don't know, if that seems weird to you, try it. It's so great. You really get the sound, you really get the music, you really get the surround sound effect. Even with just simple headphones, you get much more of that effect than you would with just a regular old TV. I mean, of course, if you have a giant crazy sound system, go for it. But I don't know, to me, it's the way to do it. So it's really good for this movie. The basic idea is you have these two characters. Darcy is Dev Patel. Darcy is the ambient sound recorder. He goes around just in nature. In that case, they're out in the countryside, and he's just recording different sounds. You know, birds, and he has the old school, like, you know, reel to reel, like strap over his shoulder recorder with a big old little, you know, big boom, you know, directional boom mic. And he's going out and recording birds and the sound of walking through, you know, the moss, the peat, or you know, the sound of water dripping into a half-filled bucket after a rain, the sound of the wind, all that kind of stuff, right? He's getting all these sounds, and he's bringing it back to his wife, Daphne, and she's an experimental electronic musician that has some kind of a cult following. You don't really know the whole story of her, but you get she's put out albums and things, and she's a known entity. And he's recording these sounds for her, and then she's got this giant, like I said, analog, old school, you know, synthesizer and all these different oscilloscopes and weird filters and machinery. It's like, you imagine it's like the setup that you might have had when they recorded you know, Dark Side of the Moon or something. She's got this whole setup in this little cabin they're living in, and she's pulling these real life sounds that he's been recording, and she's filtering them and processing them and mixing them into her electronic music and just making these weird soundscapes. And it's just like, all that stuff is really cool. So anyway, he's getting all these sounds, and one day he goes out and he's in this little grove, this wooded grove, and he finds there's like a circle of mushrooms. And if you know anything about like mythology or folk tales, out in the Welsh or Irish countryside, depending on where you're at in those areas, there's usually kind of folk tales about fairy circles. And fairy circles, these magical places, and a lot of times they're marked by a circle in the woods of like toadstools or mushrooms. And what he finds is something like that. And when he's there, he's getting really strange sounds. And in fact, I think if I remember correctly, he passes out and wakes up and listens to the music with her. And not the music, but the sounds, they're almost unnatural. And what's going on here? So it's becoming kind of magical and mysterious. And then out of nowhere, this young person, you're not even sure if it's a boy or a girl. And that's interesting. They call the person the child. It doesn't really matter. Played by Jade Crute. Person shows up and is just like curious, interested in what they're doing. And obviously you're like, whoa, is this a person? Is this a ghost? Who is this? Because this person doesn't seem to have any problem just hanging out with them for a long period of time and being around and just showing up and disappearing. But the person is there, not really threatening, showing them things like, oh, you should, this special, like it says at one point, there's this special plant growing outside of their cabin there. And it says, they say, oh, that's to help keep away the, what do they call them? I wrote it down here somewhere. To Tilwithtig, I can't even say it because you have to know Welsh. The Tilwithtig, which is, I think, like woodland creatures or fairies, like again, or I don't know exactly how they'd be, designated, but those things are kept away by these little plants that are outside their house. So you get this combination of things, right? They're recording unusual events. They're having periods where they might pass out because of the sound. There's this unknown stranger who shows up out of nowhere and starts giving them information and also being a part of their lives all of a sudden. And you've got all these stories of, possible supernatural creatures in the forest. So this is your whole world that you're living in. And I would say this is a movie, once again, where if you're grabbing into that vibe and you're enjoying it in that sense, it'll go a long way for your enjoyment of this movie. But if you're not, you're going to be probably absolutely bored or annoyed or just not on board for it. I would say for the first half of this movie, I was fully on board. I was like, this is fantastic. I'm loving this. It's so cool. It's so vibey. It has such an interesting soundscape for sure. A really lush, verdant, green, shot on film look. I don't know if it was shot on film, but it has that feel, that 70s like richness to the stuff, the look of the movie. All that stuff was just working 100% for me. I would say the payoff, the second half or the last third, doesn't quite work for me as much. It goes to the no place like ending that you expect for these kind of movies, where it's like they have this great idea and this great concept and execution, but not really a place for it to really go. There's a bunch of stuff if you want to get like super metaphoric, or you might think that there's a bunch of symbolic stuff going on. There's stuff about relationships and maybe children and not having children and, humans in the natural world, a bunch of stuff like that going on here. But it doesn't quite gel for me. So most people are not going to vibe with this, but if it sounds interesting to you, and if you watch a trailer, if you watch a trailer for this, it probably wouldn't give you anything that would give away the movie. I didn't watch the trailer, but I'm guessing just by the way this movie's put together, it probably wouldn't ruin it. But if you look like you're interested in it, I'd say give it a try. You're probably going to enjoy it enough. If it doesn't, you're probably not. I'm mildly recommending this movie. I don't know if I'm going to go as high as 3.5. I think I'll go, because I'd be like 4 stars for the first half. And like 3, yeah, I'll probably go 3.5. I think 3.5 is fair for this movie. Once again, highly warning you that this is a very particular taste that isn't going to work for most people. And it doesn't 100% work for me, which is why I'm not going 4 to 5 stars, because I could have loved this movie, but it didn't quite get there. But I enjoyed it.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. For more movie and television reviews and interviews, please subscribe to my Deepest Dream channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for your support. Take care.